Imagine walking past a man on the street, thinking he's just another person down on his luck, only to discover he's a celebrity undercover, testing society's true colors. In this jaw-dropping story, Big Shaq, known for his humor and larger-than-life personality, takes on a gritty social experiment. Disguised as homeless, he ventures into the public eye, revealing not just how ordinary people react, but also how those in authority, like the police, respond when faced with someone seemingly vulnerable. What unfolds is both shocking and eye-opening. From unexpected kindness to moments of stark indifference, this story goes beyond entertainment. It's a mirror held up to society. But what happens when a routine encounter turns into something completely unexpected? Stay tuned as we uncover the raw truth behind the uniform and the human connections we often overlook. This is one social experiment you won't forget. Big Shaq, known for his viral success and comedy sketches, has always been the life of the party. But this time, he's setting aside the laughs for something much more serious. The decision to go undercover as a homeless man wasn't made lightly. Shaq wanted to explore the often unseen realities of homelessness and see how people, especially law enforcement, react to those who are struggling the most. In the days leading up to the experiment, Shaq transformed himself. He swapped his usual flashy style for old, tattered clothes and even added some dirt to complete the look. The goal wasn't just to blend in, it was to test whether anyone would see beyond the surface. As he sat on the sidewalk, some passersby ignored him entirely, while others looked at him with suspicion. But the real drama unfolded when a group of police officers arrived, seemingly unaware of Shaq's true identity. What happened next? Well, it's far from what you'd expect. As the hours passed, Shaq's nerves began to settle, and he focused on observing everything around him. The city's busy streets seemed to be filled with people who rushed by without a second glance, their eyes fixed on their phones or their destination, oblivious to the man sitting in the shadows. A few kind-hearted souls stopped to offer him spare change or a sandwich, but the majority didn't even slow down. Then, as dusk approached, a patrol car rolled up, its siren cutting through the murmur of the street. Two officers stepped out and Shaq tensed. This was the moment he had been waiting for. He had prepared himself to see how they would treat him. The officers approached, scanning the area, clearly looking for someone or something. They eyed Shaq suspiciously, whispering to each other, and within moments, one officer knelt down beside him. Instead of offering help, the officer began questioning him in a harsh tone, asking why he was on the street and accusing him of loitering. Shaq stayed calm, hoping for the situation to unfold naturally, but the officer's tone grew more aggressive by the second. It was clear that something wasn't right. Was this just a misunderstanding, or was there something deeper at play? The tension in the air was thick, and the people walking by seemed oblivious to the scene unfolding right in front of them. Shaq felt his heart race as the officer's words grew sharper. "What are you doing here? Do you have any ID? Why are you out here acting like this?" The tone was uncomfortably dismissive, almost as if Shaq's presence didn't matter at all, just another homeless person on the streets, ignored and belittled. Shaq remained calm, his mind racing. He wondered if things would escalate further. The second officer, standing off to the side, kept glancing at Shaq, clearly uneasy, as if unsure of how to handle the situation. Yet, the first officer remained firm, continuing to interrogate him. Passers-by began to notice the interaction, some stopping to stare, others whispering among themselves. The tension in the air was palpable. A couple of people seemed to notice the growing discomfort, and one brave bystander muttered, "Leave him alone, he's not doing anything wrong." But the officers weren't backing down. They were still on high alert, ready to take action at a moment's notice. Shaq could feel the crowd watching, waiting to see how this would unfold. Would they treat him like any other person, or would something more sinister unfold? And just as the situation reached a boiling point, an unexpected twist was about to reveal a side of things nobody saw coming. Just as the tension reached its peak, something unexpected happened. A loud voice cut through the scene. "Hey, what's going on here?" A figure emerged from the crowd, walking briskly toward the officers. Shaq recognized him immediately. He was one of the local community leaders, someone who had been working with the homeless for years. The officers hesitated as the man approached. His presence seemed to shake their confidence. "You're harassing this guy for no reason," the community leader said, his voice firm but calm. "What's the problem? He's not breaking any laws." The officers stood still, momentarily caught off guard, as the crowd began to gather around them, murmuring in agreement. For a brief moment, it seemed like the situation might diffuse, but then, without warning, the second officer pulled out a notepad and started writing something down. Shaq could feel the heat rising in the air. Was this really happening? Was this going to escalate even further? The crowd grew quiet, all eyes on the officers and the growing standoff. The stakes were higher now than ever. What would happen next? The tension was thick, and Shaq could feel every nerve in his body on edge. The air was thick with tension as the officer continued scribbling on his notepad, the crowd now completely silent, waiting for something to give. Shaq's heart pounded in his chest as he tried to read the expressions of everyone around him. The community leader stood tall, still holding his ground, but the officer didn't seem to be backing down. Just as it seemed like things might spiral out of control, the officer abruptly stopped writing and looked directly at Shaq. He tilted his head slightly, almost as if he was studying him. And then, to everyone's surprise, the officer's stern expression softened. "You know, we've got a lot of people here who don't care enough to help," he said, his voice suddenly less harsh. "But I think you're in the wrong place, man. Get up. I'm letting you go this time." Shaq, still stunned, stood slowly, unsure of what had just happened. The officer nodded, signaling the end of the encounter. The crowd, sensing that the worst was over, began to disperse, whispering among themselves. Shaq let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding, but just as he started to walk away, something even more surprising occurred. The second officer, who had been mostly quiet throughout, suddenly stepped forward, pulled off his cap, and revealed his face. It was none other than one of Shaq's close friends from the entertainment industry. The surprise was overwhelming. How had he not recognized him earlier? Shaq stood frozen, realizing the officer had been in on the experiment all along. The entire scenario had been staged to expose not just the behavior of the police, but the public's response to someone in need. With the truth finally revealed, the crowd gasped, and Shaq was left standing there, still processing everything that had just unfolded. What started as a simple social experiment had now turned into a wake-up call for everyone who had witnessed it. The deeper question remained: how far would society go to ignore the ones who need help the most? The experiment had ended, but the lessons were only beginning. As the realization set in, Shaq turned to his friend, still processing the unexpected twist. The officers had been part of the social experiment all along, carefully orchestrating the scene to highlight how easily people can be overlooked, especially by those in positions of power. The crowd, now visibly shaken, exchanged looks, realizing they had just witnessed something much deeper than they initially thought. Shaq took a deep breath and addressed the gathering crowd, his voice steady but filled with a new sense of purpose. "We all have a responsibility to see each other, not just the ones who can help us, but the ones who are suffering," he said. "This experiment was meant to show that sometimes people who need help the most are the ones we ignore." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving the crowd to reflect on the powerful message. The moment had ended, but the change it sparked would linger long after.